Welcome SATS Busters to question 7, and this one's all about your knowledge of equivalent fractions, decimals and percentages. Now they've been quite kind to you on this one. They've given you a reasonably easy fraction, and that's a quarter. Most of you should be familiar with a quarter and the equivalent decimals and percentages that you could have. They could have actually given you harder fractions than this, like 2/5 for example, so we'll talk about 2/5 later. Now there's a couple of ways we could think about this. We could think about a bar. Now if we have a bar that's split into 4 pieces, then inside each bar, if the whole bar is worth 100%, if you were to split 100 into 4 pieces, each piece would be 25%. Okay, 25%. Now 25% as a decimal is 0.25. So a quarter is 25%, and it is also 0.25. And 0.25 is one of the actual boxes that we need to tick. So 0.25, there's one of the answers straight away. But the other thing we need to remember is the column headings. Because in 0.25, that is no units, 2/10, and 5/100. And you always use the end column heading whenever you're trying to turn any decimal into a fraction. Because if we've gone as far as hundredths, and that's the last column heading we've used, then we basically just read this 25 and call it 25/100ths. And that is basically the other option that we need to tick. So the other option we need to tick is 25/100ths. And there are your two answers. But just to give you a bit of extra detail, let's take another decimal for example. If we say 0.4, the final column heading there would be tenths. So as a fraction, we would call that 4/10. If we go to 0.41, the final column heading there would be above the 1, which would be hundredths. So we would call that 41/100ths. If we had 0.417, the final column heading there above the 7 would be thousandths. So we would call that 417 thousandths. And that's how you turn a decimal into a fraction. There is one final thing you can do to check. Now to turn any fraction into a decimal, you can always do a bus shelter, where you divide the top number, which is 1, by the number at the bottom, which is 4. So 4s into 1 won't go, but we haven't really used the 1, so we need to carry the 1 to the next column. But the next column is empty. This is an empty column. Now when we're doing addition and subtraction with empty columns, we always fill in that empty column with a 0. So we really need to fill in this empty column with a 0. The 1 can't just go in by itself. That remainder of 1 needs to go in with a 0, which holds the place in the empty column. But you can't just put a 0 on the end of this 1 here, because you're then turning it into 10. To keep the 1 still being worth 1, you need to put a decimal point in. So the 1 becomes 1.0. And now we can carry on. 4s into 10 goes twice, with 2 left over. But you can't just put the 2 in an empty column. You need 0 to go in the empty column first. And now with that remainder of 2, that makes 20. 4s into 20 goes 5 times. With nothing left over, therefore we've finished. Now, you also need to remember to put your decimal point in. So there's the decimal point. So 1/4 as a decimal is 0.25, which again is another reason why we ticked the 0.25 earlier.